In episode 15, after pushing the soul-nurturing flower to reach 30,000 years, a trace of Luo Meng's immortal soul that had been hidden within the soul-nurturing flower was activated, causing the pearl-headed mask he had left within the Impermanence Alliance to react. Through this soul fragment, Han Li learned that this was an extremely secretive organization, and he then used Luo Meng's identity to take part in its mission. After that, he went to Haidong Island to rendezvous, where he met 8 others led by Zhao Ba. Together, they set out for Red Moon Island to assassinate Gong Shu Hong. After passing through the city gate, Han Li noticed a faint green light lighting up above his head. He raised his head to take a look and discovered that an octagonal formation diagram was carved into the stonework above, with a round bronze mirror embedded at its center. From within the bronze mirror, a faint reddish glow shone down, sweeping over every person entering the city. With a quick glance, Han Li roughly guessed the purpose of this formation. It was used to probe cultivators who deliberately concealed their identities in order to prevent outsiders from secretly infiltrating the city. To Han Li, this formation was nothing complicated, not even particularly sophisticated. If it were a cultivator at the Great Ascension stage or above, with just a bit of effort, they could conceal themselves and avoid detection. However, the aura of a Great Ascension cultivator was far too powerful. Without using special treasures to hide it, there would be no need for this mirror at all. Upon setting foot on the island, their cultivation would immediately be discovered. Han Li's group already possessed formidable cultivation levels, and they were also wearing mysterious masks, so they had absolutely no worries about this matter. The 3 of them calmly followed the crowd and squeezed their way into the city. After a short while, the light within the bronze mirror above only rippled slightly before immediately returning to normal, clearly treating them as ordinary people. Once inside the city, the flow of people began to spread out to the left and right, and the scene within the city gradually came into view. On the streets before them, countless shops stood side by side, with merchants coming and going in a constant stream. Colorful banners hung along both sides of the road, advertising their businesses. However, it was still fairly early, and many shops had yet to open their doors. On the main road and sidewalks, aside from the citizens who had just entered the city, there were not many people. Only a few breakfast shops had already been cleaned and opened wide to welcome customers. Whether in scale or layout, Skywater City was far larger than other cities. More than 20 major roads ran along the southeast and northwest directions, dividing the entire city into 4 large districts. Han Li's group proceeded along the main road into the southern district of the city, then turned into a small side street and continued on for more than half an hour. They turned left and right repeatedly, and finally arrived at a quiet, secluded alley. The alley was extremely silent. The residences on both sides had their doors tightly shut, with no sounds at all, and not a single person could be seen coming or going. They walked to an ordinary residence located at the deepest part of the alley and then stopped. Zhao Ju glanced over the dark red main gate of the residence, nodded, and said, "This is the residence of a member of the Impermanence Alliance. When they previously infiltrated Red Moon Island, they set up a secret base here. We came here to gather, and at the same time collect intelligence." Zhao 16 stepped forward a few paces and knocked on the door like an ordinary resident. He reached out, grasped the bronze ring carved into the door, and knocked lightly with 2 short taps followed by 1 long tap. The heavy sound echoed, but afterward there was no response at all from the inner courtyard. Han Li felt that something was off and was about to probe with his divine sense, but recalling Zhao 3's earlier warning not to use divine sense casually, he stopped himself. Zhao 16 and Zhao Ju clearly also sensed that something was wrong, but like Han Li, neither of them intended to use divine sense. Zhao 16 turned around, his gaze hesitating as it flicked toward the 2 behind him. Han Li narrowed his eyes and said nothing. Zhao Ju thought for a moment, then raised his hand to signal the other 2 to prepare for combat. Just as the 3 of them were about to take action, a burst of jingling sounds suddenly came from within the residence, following a rhythm of 3 long and 1 short, exactly as agreed upon. The 3 were momentarily startled and looked toward the main gate. Zhao 16 thought for a moment, then increased the strength in his hand and quickly knocked on the door 3 more times. A short while later, the dark red main gate let out a creaking sound and opened a gap just wide enough for 1 person to pass through. From the gap appeared a big-faced, middle-aged man. He swept his gaze over the 3 people outside the door, then spoke in a low voice. Han Li observed the middle-aged man and immediately realized that the other's appearance was also clearly an illusion formed by an Impermanence Alliance mask. Though he looked like an ordinary person with nothing remarkable about him, among those wearing the same masks, there was a faint sense of connection, like the subtle resonance between members of the Impermanence Alliance. Zhao Ju and Zhao 16 also noticed this and stepped through the gap into the courtyard one after another. Han Li hesitated for a brief moment before following the big-faced man inside. After seeing that all three had entered the courtyard, the man stuck his head out the door to look around once, then closed the door. This small courtyard was more than 100 zhang wide. Inside, aside from a withered old tree, there was only a set of bluish-brown stone tables and chairs placed beneath the tree's canopy. Except for the area around the base of the tree, which was bare earth, all other places were paved with brand new green bricks, clean and spotless, without a single dry branch in sight. Going deeper inside, directly opposite the main gate, stood a main hall, with several side rooms on either side, all of their doors tightly shut. The big-faced man led the way in front while turning his head to say to the three, "People have already been sent from above. I have been waiting here for a long time. May I ask which lord is presiding this time?" From the moment he entered the courtyard, Han Li had been quietly observing the man in front of him. The instant the other party asked this question, a flash of cold light suddenly appeared in Han Li's eyes. Han Li abruptly raised his fist and viciously struck at the other's back. The big-faced man showed a look of fear, but he seemed to have been prepared long ago. A patch of red light suddenly lit up behind him, transforming into a hazy round shield with a silvery glow. Only a dull bang was heard as the silvery round shield exploded apart. The big-faced man was blasted backward, crashing down onto the stone steps in front of the main hall. He spat out several mouthfuls of fresh blood, and his aura immediately weakened by quite a bit. Zhao Ju and Zhao 16 immediately realized that something was wrong. Just as the three of them were about to rush forward, an abrupt change occurred. A dull, booming sound spread in all directions, and the surrounding void faintly twisted. With a small courtyard as the center, within a range of several hundred zhang, streaks of sky-filling red light lit up simultaneously. Immediately afterward, a massive blood-colored formation diagram phantom appeared in midair, its exterior covered with countless flickering blood-red talismans. Before Han Li's group could react, red light flashed at the center of the formation diagram. In the next instant, all three of them, along with the big-faced man, vanished at the same time, swept into a blood-colored space. Zhao Ju said with some alarm, "Fellow Taoists, I have a way to break through this space, but I need the two of you to protect me for a moment." Zhao 16 knocked away several blood ghosts in front of him and replied, his tone somewhat urgent. "All right, fellow Taoist, go ahead and cast your technique." Han Li also responded immediately, then his hands flashed as he lashed out with a grab. In an instant, two blood ghosts were hurled toward the left. Zhao 16 charged into a cluster of blood ghosts, while Zhao Ju blasted away several, blocking his path in one breath and leaped to the right. Zhao 16 formed hand seals and began chanting incantations, while a low, rumbling sound echoed. In front of Zhao Ju, a mass of blue-glowing watery mist condensed, from which a dense water attribute force spread out. Zhao Ju shouted, "Go!" and thrust both hands forward forcefully. A dragon's roar rang out as a deep blue water dragon surged forth from the mist, baring its fangs and claws as it charged toward the army of blood ghosts on the right. On Zhao 16's side, booming sounds rang out as waves of water surged everywhere. In the blink of an eye, dozens of blood ghosts were knocked, flying by the charging water dragon, throwing the entire formation into chaos. At the same time, Han Li's figure had already appeared on the left. He continuously cut straight through the blood ghosts, his fists opening and closing with great force, knocking each one away. Blue light flickered in his eyes as he swept his gaze in all directions. Seeing this, Zhao 16 swiftly regained his composure and then sat down cross-legged on the spot. He raised his hand, and a black, three-pronged, mace-shaped object appeared in front of him, its pointed tip aimed upward, as if it intended to pierce straight into the sky. Its surface was densely covered with tiny, obscure talisman patterns emitting waves of spatial fluctuations. At a glance, it seemed to be a low-grade acquired immortal artifact containing a trace of the power of laws. This scene caused both Han Li and Zhao Ju to feel somewhat surprised. After all, throughout the entire Blackwind Sea region, there were not many people who possessed immortal artifacts, let alone the fact that Zhao 16 was merely a rogue immortal. Zhao 16 raised both hands before him as low incantations steadily flowed from his mouth. After a while, the chanting stopped, and he placed his palm on the iron mace. A gash immediately split open in his palm, and fresh blood poured out. When the blood stained the iron mace, the object instantly radiated dazzling light, as if it were burning, turning a deep crimson and causing the space above to tremble even more violently. But at this very moment, a miserable scream suddenly rang out within the blood-colored space. Han Li and Zhao Ju immediately turned their gazes in that direction. They saw that the protective barrier around the big-faced man had been torn apart and his entire body was engulfed by dense blood ghosts. However, in the next instant, A massive red light suddenly lit up within the swarm of blood ghosts, then flashed. A small figure shot out. It was the nascent soul of the big-faced man. The nascent soul held a blood-colored small sword in its hand, its expression crazed as it charged upward into the sky. The nascent soul had not flown far when another sudden change occurred. In the sky, a patch of blood clouds abruptly split open with a crack. From within flew out a purple round bowl, spinning rapidly as it emitted an incomparably powerful suction force. In the blink of an eye, it sucked both the nascent soul and the body that had already lost all reason into it. The moment the nascent soul was drawn in, a strange force immediately surged forward, shredding it apart and turning it into a sparkling mass of red light that entered the bowl. Immediately afterward, clusters of obscure talisman patterns appeared on the surface of the bowl, faint black light seeming to be engraved deep into it. As the round bowl devoured the nascent soul, an old man of around 60 years of age, dressed in a purple blood moon robe, suddenly flew out from within the blood clouds. Without saying a word, he waved his hand and pointed to the round bowl suspended in midair. A humming sound rang out as the talismans on the bowl's surface suddenly lit up, black light intertwining and transforming into countless fine patterns. Right after that, a thick beam of black light, about the size of a rice bowl, condensed within the bowl and shot straight down toward Zhao 16 below. Han Li and Zhao Ju were both blocked by blood ghosts at that moment, and even if they wanted to intervene, they were too late. Zhao 16, meanwhile, was at the final critical stage of his spellcasting. Faced with this sudden situation, there was no way for him to evade it. At the critical moment, with no other choice, Zhao 16 forcibly redirected the tip of the iron mace toward the incoming black beam instead of thrusting it straight into the sky as originally planned. The iron mace, already deep crimson, flashed with light and was struck head-on by the black beam. A deafening explosion rang out. In front of Zhao 16, a ring of dazzling dark red light suddenly appeared, blazing like a sun. An extremely violent shockwave swept outward in all directions, forcing the surrounding blood mist to retreat several hundred jang. Dense clusters of blood ghosts were wiped out, blown violently away. Han Li and Zhao Ju were also swept up by the shockwave and hurled toward Zhao 16. However, before they could get close, they saw streaks of crimson light retracting, and both of their expressions tightened slightly. Zhao 16's eyes were tightly shut as his entire body went limp and collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Several black pillars of light transformed into chain-like restraints around his limbs and torso, binding him tightly to the ground. Faint waves of law fluctuations could be seen emanating from them. Immediately afterward, dense and continuous peals of thunder rang out from the sky. Han Li and Zhao Ju halted and instantly leaped backward. Boom! 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 Clusters of dark red lightning fire, each as large as a millstone, crashed down in succession, exploding in blinding flashes and engulfing the spot where the two had just been standing. Han Li and Zhao Ju stabilized themselves and looked up at the same time. They saw the old man in the purple robe holding the round bowl in his hands. His gaunt face was shrouded in a layer of strange red light. Around him swirled masses of black blood clouds, within which streaks of lightning flickered. The old man let out a hey, hey laugh and said, "I had long suspected that those people must still have accomplices. I never expected 3 true immortals to come here instead." That really leaves this old man somewhat overwhelmed by such honor. If you do not wish to completely lose your sanity, then obediently raise your hands and submit. Zhao Ju replied coldly, "If you are a sensible person, you should hurry up and release us." The old man in the purple robe sneered. "Tss, tss. You're already on the brink of death, yet you still dare to speak so wildly. In that case, let this old man properly entertain you." As soon as his words fell, the round bowl flew out of his hands and spun rapidly. Within the black blood clouds, thunder roared violently. Hundreds of dark red lightning fires poured down like fiery meteors, sweeping toward Han Li and Zhao Ju. Boom! 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 Explosions rang out continuously, causing the entire space to tremble violently. Each time a massive lightning fire struck the ground, it gouged out a huge crater, from which plumes of blood-colored flames burst forth and scattered in all directions. In a short time, within a range of several li, the area was filled everywhere with gloomy clusters of blood-colored flames like lotus-shaped fire blooms radiating terrifying heat. Whether intentionally or not, the old man ensured that the lightning fire avoided the position where Zhao 16 was restrained. However, the splashing flames still struck his body, causing him to awaken from his unconscious state. His entire body was burned, his face contorted with pain, and he let out continuous groans. Blue light flickered in Han Li's eyes as his figure moved ceaselessly, dodging the lightning fire filling the sky along with the blood ghosts. Even so, he could not completely avoid being splashed by the flames. He felt the blood within his body boil along with the fire, and a trace of violent will surged up in his heart. At that very moment, urged by his thoughts, a cool stream of will rose from his dantian, circulated once, and instantly dispersed that violent impulse. Not far away, a blue gourd had appeared in Jiaoju's hand at some point, spraying out streams of blue water light. A blue water screen formed around him, temporarily shielding him from the encroaching blood flames. However, with lightning fire raining down densely and blood ghosts attacking from all sides, he too gradually felt unable to hold on. In just a short while, the surrounding space was nearly completely engulfed by blood-colored flames, and the area where Han Li and Jiaoju could evade continued to shrink. At the same time, more and more blood ghosts poured out from the cracks in the ground. They seemed completely unaffected by the blood flames. Instead, they became even more agile, powerful, and ferocious, fearlessly charging forward to surround and attack. Jiaoju flashed aside to avoid several masses of lightning fire. Just as he stabilized himself, many blood ghosts rushed at him. His expression turned grave. Suddenly, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a bit of essence blood, which soaked into the blue gourd. The blue radiance on the gourd abruptly expanded, with countless blue talismans faintly appearing. From within the gourd came a roaring sound like a great river surging forward. Torrents of water surged out of the gourd's mouth, transforming into squads of water soldiers clad in blue armor, holding ice spears as they met the blood ghosts attacking from all directions. After doing all this, Jiaoju's lips moved slightly as he sent a voice transmission to Han Li standing not far away. Jiao 15, quickly end this matter. I'll find a way to restrain that old man. You hurry and rescue Jiao 16 from danger, then help me break this place. After speaking, red light flashed in Jiaoju's eyes, and his entire body transformed into a dazzling streak of rainbow light that shot straight toward the purple-robed old man in midair. Han Li appeared indifferent, as if he had not heard anything, and did not reply. He threw out several punches, blasting away a few blood ghosts that were surrounding him. Then his figure flickered as he appeared beside several clusters of lightning fire. Suddenly, however, he changed direction, circled around, and hurriedly shot toward a patch of empty space. Jiaoju had only just managed to restrain the purple-robed old man. Seeing this situation, he was momentarily stunned, then immediately shouted in anger while panting heavily, "Jiao 15, where are you going?" Before his words had even finished, a solidified beam of black light tore through the air. It was the purple-robed old man urging the round bowl in his hand, launching a direct attack toward the top of Jiaoju's head. Jiaoju hurriedly activated the blue gourd in front of him. From its mouth burst several surging streams of blue light, transforming into a gigantic blue vortex that blocked his body. A loud bang rang out as the black beam fell into the center of the vortex. A mass of black light exploded within, emitting a low rumble before quickly shrinking down. However, at that very moment, sharp whistling sounds tore through the air as several more solidified beams of black light shot out from the round bowl, leaving Jiaoju with no attention to spare for Han Li. He could only desperately urge the blue gourd, continuously spewing out blue light to block the attacks. At this moment, the red light in Jiaoju's eyes grew increasingly intense, and the white jade pendant worn on his chest became dim, no longer gleaming as before. The purple-robed old man laughed wildly and said, "Ha ha! Your companion has already abandoned you and fled, but you can rest assured he has absolutely no chance of escaping this blood-mang space." The purple-robed old man did not spare Han Li another glance and continued urging the round bowl in his hand. At this time, Han Li had already taken the opportunity to appear several hundred zhang away. Without a word, he raised his fist and punched toward a spot ahead. A massive boom echoed as the entire blood-colored space suddenly shook. A dazzling light erupted where the fist force struck, instantly transforming into a white rift that extended for several thousand zhang. A shattering sound, like glass being smashed, rang out as the entire blood-colored space began to fracture from that white rift, then broke apart into countless fragments that dissipated into nothingness. The surroundings suddenly brightened. The figures of Han, Li, and the others once again appeared in midair, above the small courtyard within Skywater City. At this moment, on the small road outside the residence, 8 Blood Moon cultivators in blue robes were lying sprawled all over the ground, with many formation plates scattered beside them. They were precisely the ones who had summoned and controlled the Blood Mang spatial formation, all of them cultivators at the integration stage. When Han Li shattered the space, they were struck by backlash, causing blood to flow from their 7 orifices as their breathing became faint. Within the courtyard, Jiao 16's body was charred black as he lay motionless beside the withered tree. The black light restraints binding him had vanished. His overall aura was somewhat unstable, but his life was not in danger. At that very moment, a tremendous boom resounded in the air above. The small courtyard exploded, erupting into a patch of blinding light. Two figures shot out from it, streaking off in two different directions. One of them was Zhao Ju. The red glow in his eyes gradually receded, his divine sense became clear again, and a trace of joy appeared in his gaze. The other was the purple-robed old man, whose expression was now extremely ugly, fear clearly revealed in his eyes. He looked toward Han Li, his gaze filled with resentment and malice. No matter what, he had never expected that the one who appeared to have the weakest strength among the three was actually Han Li, who not only discovered the weak point of the Grand Formation, but also shattered the entire formation in a single strike by his own power. It had to be known that the Bloodmang space was extremely sturdy, far stronger than ordinary Grand Formations. Even if an ordinary Immortal were to discover its weakness, they might not be able to break it with a single blow. This thought flashed through the purple-robed old man's mind and vanished in an instant. He immediately raised his hand and slapped hard against the bottom of the round bowl. Circles of strange ripples, visible to the naked eye, rapidly spread outward. Within the alley, successive puff-puff sounds rang out as the heads of the integration stage cultivators exploded one after another. Their nascent souls were drawn by this vibration, transforming into streaks of bloodlight that flew upward and plunged into the round bowl, where they were instantly twisted into fragments and vanished. Strangely, among them was one person whose body emitted a layer of white light, seemingly protected by a treasure that resisted this bizarre shockwave, causing his head not to explode. This made the purple-robed old man pause slightly. He did not bother to pay further attention and continued urging his incantation. The black talismans on the round bowl lit up again, and two beams of black light, thicker and larger than before, shot out rapidly, charging respectively toward Han Li and Zhao Ju. Seeing this, Zhao Ju activated the spirit patterns on the gourd in his hand. He opened his mouth and spat out a shimmering pillar of water as thick as a bucket. With a loud boom, blue-black light exploded, and countless water droplets scattered in all directions. Zhao Ju's body was pushed back dozens of zhang by the residual shock before he finally stabilized himself. On the other side, Han Li was also forced to move repeatedly to avoid the black light's attack. When he steadied himself and looked up at the sky, he discovered that the spot where the purple-robed old man had been standing was now empty, calm, and peaceful, as if nothing had ever happened. After thinking for a moment, Han Li's figure flickered as he moved to Zhao 16, who lay paralyzed beneath the withered tree. He helped him up, took out a pill, and fed it to him. Zhao 16's injuries were not light. He nodded slightly toward Han Li without saying anything more, then sat down cross-legged and quietly began circulating his energy to heal. On the other side, seeing that the purple-robed old man had disappeared, Zhao Ju's figure flashed as he appeared before an integration stage cultivator who was still barely alive. Without waiting for the other to speak, Zhao Ju's 5 fingers hooked like claws and seized his head. Blue light flashed in his palm, and the integration stage cultivator immediately lost consciousness. Right after that, wrapped in a streak of blue light, a pale red nascent soul was forcibly extracted from the body. Its face was full of terror, its eyes dull, looking extremely listless. Holding the nascent soul in his hand, Zhao Ju walked into the small courtyard. He first glanced at Zhao 16, who was sitting with eyes closed and regulating his breathing, then turned to look at Han Li standing nearby and said, "I did not expect that fellow Taoist attainments and formations and restrictions were so profound. Earlier, I even misunderstood and thought you fled out of fear of battle. I hope fellow Taoist will not take offense." Zhao Ju gave Han Li a slight nod. Han Li smiled and said, "You flatter me too much. As for any attainment in formations, it was nothing more than a coincidence that I found a weakness in that space. Fortunately, fellow Taoist's divine abilities were great enough to restrain that rogue immortal, which gave me the chance to break the formation." Zhao Ju did not say anything further. His gaze shifted to the nascent soul in his hand, and his expression suddenly turned cold. He swung his arm and struck with a palm. A soft puff sounded as a fine wisp of black smoke flew out from his palm and drilled straight into the nascent soul's head. The nascent soul trembled violently, letting out a miserable scream. Zhao Ju remained completely unmoved, black smoke continuously pouring from his palm in ever greater amounts, relentlessly invading it. The nascent soul's screams gradually weakened. The expression on its tiny face became vacant, its eyes losing all focus. Zhao Ju frowned slightly, but still continued to urge the black smoke. At this moment, a layer of star-like light suddenly appeared around the nascent soul's body, causing its form to turn indistinct. "This is bad!" Seeing this, Han Li suddenly realized something and hurriedly spoke up. However, before he could finish, the nascent soul let out a soft pop and shattered, turning into a patch of scattered light that dissipated. The corners of Zhao Ju's mouth twitched slightly, his expression turning somewhat ugly. He said, "It seems this nascent soul's spirit was placed under some kind of restriction. Once soul-searching touches certain memories, the restriction immediately activates." Han Li let out a soft sigh and asked, "What did fellow Taoist Zhao Ju manage to find out? I didn't obtain any useful information. Given this person's status, he didn't know much to begin with. However, it can be confirmed that the Impermanence Alliance personnel here were indeed completely wiped out by them." Zhao Ju shook his head and said, Hearing this, Han Li frowned. "Then what should we do next?" At this moment, Zhao 16 had recovered somewhat and stood up, asking, "What do we do now?" Zhao Ju said in a deep voice, "First, thoroughly investigate Skywater City. Since we've already been exposed, there's no need to hold back anymore." At the same time, high above the clouds, tens of thousands of li away from Skywater City, a dark red tower ship tore through the wind, speeding rapidly forward. The dark red tower ship flew through the clouds. Clear on its hull were carvings of several pairs of dark crimson wings, which transformed into 8 large wings beating in rhythm, giving it astonishing speed. The tower ship was divided into 2 levels, each with several independent rooms. In the room on the very top level, the purple-robed old man who had just fought Han Li and the others sat cross-legged, his expression gloomy. After thinking for a moment, he flipped his hand and took out a large jade disc, placing it on his palm. His eyes focused on the jade disc a few times, and immediately a layer of red light surfaced on it. Right after that, a hoarse voice sounded from within. "Ju Wu, how is the situation?" The purple-robed old man replied calmly, "I have already clashed with the people sent by the Impermanence Alliance." A smug laugh rang out from the jade disc. "Ha ha, just as expected. It seems my guess was not wrong." The purple-robed old man snorted coldly and said, "The strength of those who came was far higher than you anticipated. 2 rogue immortals and 1 earth immortal, 3 true immortals in total. If I hadn't still had a few tricks up my sleeve, I would probably have lost to them. Unfortunately, 1 subordinate fell into their hands." The voice from the jade disc asked, "Did that subordinate know anything important?" "How much could an integration stage cultivator possibly know?" the purple-robed old man replied disdainfully. "That's good then. With 3 true immortals appearing there alone, it seems this time the Impermanence Alliance truly came with ill intent. If they know what's good for them and retreat, we can let it go. But if they don't know their place and continue to meddle, the Saint Lord will naturally teach them a lesson. You've worked hard this time, return first," the voice in the jade disc said with a cold laugh. The purple-robed old man's brows knit slightly, clearly dissatisfied with the commanding tone of the other party, but he said nothing more. He waved his hand and formed incantation seals. The red light on the tower ship flared even brighter, its speed increasing as it rapidly flew forward. Inside a certain stone hall in Skywater City, the interior space was quite vast but empty. Tall stone pillars stood on both sides, with braziers placed atop them, though none were lit at the moment. Han Li and the other 2 stood at the entrance of the main hall, having already restored the masks on their heads. With their current cultivation and divine sense, they no longer had any reservations, and they had quickly swept the entirety of Skywater City. They discovered that there were no high-level cultivators at the Void Refinement stage or above within the city, nor did they find anything unusual. In a remote location in the southern part of the city, they found this stone hall. At the center of the hall, 3 corpses were laid out neatly. Their flesh was completely shriveled, their faces twisted and deformed, as if they had witnessed something extremely terrifying before death. Beside the corpses were several green masks, different from the ones Han Li's group was wearing. Judging from the desiccated state of the bodies, it seemed that all of their blood had been drained in an instant. The fact that the corpses were openly displayed here was clearly meant as a provocation. After examining the bodies and the masks, Zhao Ju said slowly, 1 at the Great Ascension stage, and 2 at the Integration stage. It seems they were killed immediately upon contact, without even having time for their nascent souls to escape. It was likely that rogue immortal who acted, but that person seems able to wield a trace of the power of laws, Han Li said thoughtfully as he looked at the 3 corpses. That old fox Gong Shu Hong clearly prepared restrictions long ago. What just happened was very much like a carefully laid trap, luring us step by step into it, Zhao 16 said through clenched teeth. Don't dwell on these matters. It seems we won't find any more leads in Skywater City. Before leaving, I need to report the situation to Lord Zhao 3 and then discuss the next course of action, Zhao Ju said. After speaking, he formed incantation seals. Ripples of blue light rose from the blue goat head mask he was wearing, flickering unsteadily before suddenly brightening. Zhao Ju closed his eyes, his lips moving slightly. Han Li and Zhao 16 stood to the side, not making a sound to disturb him. After a moment, the light on Zhao Ju's mask receded and he opened his eyes. Zhao 16 hurriedly asked, "What did Lord Zhao 3 say?" He instructed us to immediately head to Donghua City to assemble, Zhao Ju replied slowly. Were the others also attacked? Han Li suddenly asked. Lord Zhao. 3 and another team of fellow Taoists are quite far from their target city and have not encountered any mishaps so far. However, judging from the current situation, most of their contact personnel inside the cities have probably already met with disaster. The other side was prepared in advance. If they want to launch a sneak attack, it likely won't be easy, Zhao Ju said in a deep voice. Han Li nodded and did not ask further. There are no more clues here. Let's go. Zhao Ju waved his hand, and a streak of blue light swept up several corpses from the ground as he took the lead out of the stone hall. The 3 quickly left Skywater City and arrived at a vast open plain. Zhao 16 was just about to use a concealment secret art when Zhao Ju spoke up. No need. Lord Zhao 3 said that since the enemy already knows of our existence, there's no need to waste effort hiding anymore. We'll head straight to Donghua City. As he spoke, Zhao Ju flicked his sleeve. Wind and water surged in all directions, and a blue crystalline flying ship over Tenjiang long appeared on the open ground ahead. It was teardrop-shaped, its entire body gleaming with spiritual light. Zhao 16 looked at the flying ship with admiration in his eyes. This flying ship was refined from cloud blue heavenly crystal. Although it's not an immortal artifact, it's not far off. Han Li let out a light breath and smiled. You flatter it too much. It's just a spiritual treasure flying ship, hardly that impressive. Zhao Ju laughed heartily. This flying ship is very fast and convenient for travel. Zhao 16, recover from your injuries quickly. I'm afraid there will be no shortage of fierce battles ahead. The 3 boarded the flying ship one after another. Zhao Ju cast a spell, and the ship flashed with blue light, transforming into a blue streak that shot away. Donghua City was much larger in scale than Skywater City. Inside the city was a vast lake connected to several major rivers that extended from within the city outward. It was early morning, and people were coming and going in great numbers, revealing a scene of prosperity. Han Li and the others quickly arrived at a quiet estate in the western part of the city, where Zhao 3 and another team led by Zhao 8 had already arrived. Under Zhao 3's instructions, Zhao Ju recounted in detail the ambush in Skywater City, then took out the corpses of the Impermanence Alliance members who had served as undercover agents and laid them out before everyone. Zhao 3 looked at the shriveled corpses, cold light flashing in his eyes. The others' expressions also changed. When we discovered them, they were already like this, Zhao Zhao said. As expected, the people who infiltrated earlier have all gone missing, Zhao 3 said in a low voice. Along the route of investigation, aside from within the cities, there were almost no traces of people outside. It was said that even along the road leading to the sacred island for the pilgrimage, no other abnormalities were found. As for the results of investigating the pilgrimage, their findings were not much different from Zhao Ju's group. It was very likely that this was a method used by Gongshu Hong to gather faith power. Zhao 8, wearing a monkey mask, thought for a moment and said, Did you notice the people participating in the pilgrimage? I heard that after the pilgrimage, a few devout believers were selected and never returned to their cities. That's indeed the case, Han Li suddenly spoke. They were said to be taken away, but it's very likely Gongshu Hong wanted to strengthen the believers' faith, or it was some kind of method. Returning to the main matter, neither Lord Zhao 3 nor I encountered an ambush. It seems the other side was already on guard against our Impermanence Alliance. The accuracy of the information previously gathered by our internal members should probably be reconsidered. Zhao 8 nodded and shifted the topic. That's right. It's possible the other side already grasped some of our movements and deliberately released false information, setting traps to lure us in. They just misjudged our strength somewhat. Putting that aside for now, Gongshu Hong definitely won't be in the 6 or 7 locations we investigated earlier. Instead, it's very likely he's inside the so-called Sacred Red Moon City. Why don't we go there directly to investigate? We might gain something. Zhao Ju gave a bitter smile. Speaking of this, Red Moon Island has 28 major and minor prefectures. It seems each prefecture has a city, all called Red Moon City. Zhao 8 shook his head upon hearing this. That's true. Zhao Ju was slightly stunned. According to the maps we obtained earlier, although there was one place called Red Moon City, when we passed by another city, we discovered it was also called Red Moon City, and it was located in a different area. At first, they did not pay much attention to it, but later they discovered that this was indeed the case. Although they only passed through a few prefectures, they paid special attention and found that each prefecture had a Red Moon City. After saying this, Zhao 8 raised his sleeve, and 5 jade slips flew toward the other 5 people, including Han Li. Everyone took the jade slips and extended their divine sense to examine them. The maps inside were far more detailed than before. Besides the Red Moon City directly ahead, several other prefectures were also marked with a Red Moon City. The territory of each prefecture was extremely vast, clearly concealed deliberately by high-level cultivators. Ordinary mortals, and even low-level cultivators, were simply unable to detect this. Along the way, only small regional maps were sold in the cities. Complete maps of the entire island were never sold. Now, it seemed very likely this was deliberately arranged by Gong Shuhong. The cultivators under him were probably all placed under special restrictions that prevented them from revealing this matter, otherwise their souls would violently collapse and they would die. Even the map they'd obtained earlier might have been deliberately leaked by the other side. Zhao Ju nodded and slowly voiced this speculation. After hearing it, everyone fell silent. With the current clues, Gong Shuhong's whereabouts had become extremely obscure, making the situation truly difficult to handle. Han Li suddenly seemed to think of something. He put down the jade slip, then pressed it to his forehead again, shock flashing in his eyes. If there are no other clues at the moment, why don't we start investigating those Red Moon cities? Zhao 3 suddenly spoke. Everyone, act together and investigate each Red Moon city. Lord Zhao 3 isn't going with us? Zhao Ju asked in surprise. I'll act on my own. Whatever you find, transmit the information to me, Zhao 3 said as he glanced at everyone. Then, his entire body flashed with red light, his aura no longer concealed, and he shot straight into the sky and departed. It seems Lord Zhao 3 has gone to look for Gong Shuhong, Zhao 8 coughed lightly. We'll just handle things according to his instructions. This is the Red Moon City in Lan Prefecture. It's not far from here. The others changed their appearances one after another, left the estate, and blended into the crowd outside the city. Along the way, Han Li suddenly said, "Please wait here for a moment. I have a small errand to attend to. I'll be right back." After saying this, he did not wait for a reply and quickly walked toward a shop selling books. The others were momentarily stunned, exchanged glances, and said nothing. Not long after, Han Li returned, holding several volumes that all appeared to be books about the island's geography. He nodded slightly to everyone and then put the books away. The group quickly left Longhu City, arrived at a quiet place, and then used escape techniques to soar into the sky. Zhao Ju once again used the blue crystal flying ship. Han Li and Zhao 16 were already aboard, which caused Zhao 8's group some surprise. Standing on the flying ship, Han Li looked down at the great river near Longhu City, then sat down cross-legged and took out the books one by one, carefully flipping through them. Zhao 16 was somewhat curious about Han Li's actions, but he did not pay much attention and focused on recovering himself. Han Li quickly finished reading the books, thought for a moment, then took out the jade slip given by Zhao 8 and probed it with his divine sense. By this time, the sky had gradually darkened, and stars filled the heavens. The seven traveled at extreme speed, and only after more than half a day did their escaping light stop before a massive city. This city was precisely Red Moon City of Lan Prefecture. Its area was far larger than that of Longhu City. A river several hundred jang wide wound its way through the city, and the entire city was enveloped by a massive blue restriction. From time to time, ripples of shimmering light appeared atop the restriction, carrying a sense of mystery. Through the blue light, only the vague outline of the city inside could be seen. However, at the 4 city gates to the east, west, south, and north, openings had been left in the restriction. At each gate, Blood Moon cultivators in blue robes stood guard, inspecting those entering and leaving. If my guess is correct, this should be the long-famous Heavenly Illusion water restriction, Zhao 8 muttered as he looked at the blue restriction. Besides its defensive function, it's also extremely sensitive to divine sense. With defenses this tight, could this be the real lair of Red Moon Island? Zhao 21, walking behind Zhao 8, said with some excitement. The eyes of the others all lit up. Zhao 8 said in a deep voice, "Whether it is or not, let's go in and take a look first. Everyone, be careful. Try your best to restrain your divine sense and do not touch the formation restriction." The 7 descended at a remote spot outside the city and merged into the stream of people entering. Despite the presence of nascent soul cultivators guarding the gates, they passed through smoothly and entered the city. Inside, the ground was paved with neat, clean green stone, shops lined both sides of the streets, and the scene looked very prosperous. 2 main roads connected the 4 city gates, dividing the entire city into 4 districts. At the center of the city was an enormous plaza, which was now packed with people. At least several million people had gathered there. Every one of them wore a reverent expression, bowing in worship toward a giant statue in the middle of the plaza. The entire city was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Seeing this scene, Han Li and the others immediately understood this was the so-called pilgrimage ritual. Han Li was slightly startled by the sight within the city. The others were also surprised, but quickly understood that what lay before them was indeed the pilgrimage ceremony. Blue light flickered in Han Li's eyes as he swept his gaze around, then frowned slightly. Although there were countless people in the city, the vast majority were mortals without any magical power. The cultivators present were only low-level ones, from chi refining to core formation. Although there were some Blood Moon cultivators in blue robes within the city, their cultivation was not high either. The strongest were only at the nascent soul or deity transformation stage. There were no cultivators at the void refinement stage or above to be seen at all. At first glance, this place did not resemble the location they were seeking. The others had clearly noticed this as well, and their expressions all grew somber. Zhao 8 spoke up. No matter what, let's first carefully investigate this city. Perhaps we'll find some clues. Everyone nodded. After a brief discussion, they decided to split up and act separately. The city was simply too large, and using divine sense to probe a wide area would be inappropriate. Moreover, everyone was within the city. If enemies were lying in ambush, they could still support one another in time. After the discussion, each person quickly separated. Han Li walked along a street, blue light flickering in his eyes as he carefully surveyed his surroundings. His figure gradually became faint, as if blending into the environment. On the streets, the crowds were all silently praying. Moving about alone would easily draw attention, so he used a concealment technique on himself. Before long, Han Li appeared before a shop by the roadside, a bookstore dealing in ancient texts. At this moment, the entire city was engaged in the pilgrimage ritual. Although the shop was open, there were no customers, only a middle-aged shopkeeper watching over it. Han Li flashed inside and, after a short while, came back out. After that, he did not linger and continued to seriously investigate other parts of the city. Red Moon City covered a considerable area. It took nearly half a day before the seven finished surveying the entire city and regrouped at a quiet location. Unfortunately, none of them discovered anything abnormal. This Red Moon City seemed to be nothing more than an ordinary city. Zhao 8 spoke up. It seems this isn't the lair of Red Moon Island. If that's the case, there's no need for us to keep wasting time here. Wait a moment. A voice suddenly rang out, cutting Zhao 8 off. It was Zhao 25. He was squatting on the ground, and rings of yellow ripples, visible to the naked eye, spread out from his body, drilling into the earth. What is it, 25? Did you discover something underground? Zhao 8 asked joyfully. I can sense that more than 100 zhang below, there's a fairly large hollow space. It was clearly created by someone, Zhao 25 said as he stood up. Hearing this, everyone immediately extended their divine sense downward. Sure enough, deep below, a large hollow space appeared. Everyone's eyes lit up. Zhao 8 narrowed his eyes and praised him. Good thing you were careful, otherwise we would have missed a suspicious location. It's only because I cultivate a special technique, making me a bit more sensitive to conditions underground, Zhao 25 replied modestly. Let's go take a look at that underground palace, Zhao 8 said, leading the way as everyone submerged into the earth. The other two members of Zhao 8's team immediately followed, and Zhao 25 also descended with them. In just a moment, only Han Li's group of 3 remained on the surface. Zhao Ju's expression looked somewhat displeased, and he did not follow right away. Zhao 16 and Han Li exchanged a glance and also remained where they were. Although the 7 were acting together, they had already been divided into smaller groups by Zhao 3 beforehand. After a moment of silence, Zhao Ju said, "Let's go as well." Blue light radiated from his body as he began to sink into the ground. Han Li and Zhao 16 also cast their techniques and followed. After some time, the 3 entered the space deep underground. This space was extremely vast, with a circumference of at least several thousand zhang. The ground was flat and entirely paved with dark blue-black stone slabs, forming a circular plaza. The place looked desolate, as if no one had come here for a very long time. Seeing this scene, everyone felt a trace of doubt in their hearts. Han Li turned his gaze toward another corner of the stone chamber and quietly drew in a breath. The air here was very heavy, permeated with the stench of blood and an unpleasant yin-cold aura. He squatted down, pressed his 5 fingers into one of the stone slabs, and pulled it out. Beneath it was dark red soil, covered by a faint black layer, looking extremely eerie. Han Li grabbed a handful of the soil, examined it briefly, then flicked his hand and threw it away. Zhao 16 walked over and asked, "Did you find anything?" "Nothing specific," Han Li said thoughtfully. "It just feels that this stone chamber is somewhat strange. The smell of blood and yin energy lingers everywhere, as if quite a few people have died here. The soil beneath these stone slabs has already turned into yin soil. This place should be where the other side specifically disposes of enemies," Zhao 16 said. Han Li slowly shook his head. "If it were only for killing people, it could be done anywhere. Why bring them all the way underground and deliberately construct a stone chamber like this?" He felt that the matter was extremely strange, but for the moment, he could not think of the reason. At the same time, Zhao Eight's group was also discussing and speculating on the purpose of the underground space. Zhao Ju suddenly spoke, "There's no need to overthink it. If we want to know why this place exists, we just need to capture someone and interrogate them." After saying that, he waved his hand and sent out a streak of yellow light. It was a small yellow banner. The banner flashed once, then burrowed into the ceiling of the stone chamber and vanished. Somewhere outside the plaza of Red Moon City, a middle-aged nascent soul cultivator in a green blood moon robe was patrolling the city to maintain order. At this moment, the ground beneath his feet suddenly flashed with yellow light. A huge golden hand shot up from underground like lightning, tightly grasped his legs, and yanked him downward. The solid ground beneath the middle-aged man rippled with rings of yellow light, as if it had turned into soft mud. With a whoosh, his body was instantly dragged underground and vanished without a trace. The yellow ripples on the ground quickly dissipated as well. The people around were still fully focused on the pilgrimage ritual, and no one noticed the sudden anomaly. Above the underground plaza, deep beneath the earth, yellow light flashed. A beam of golden light wrapped around the body of the falling middle-aged cultivator. His body slammed heavily onto the ground with a dull thud. When he saw Han Li and the others, his expression immediately changed drastically, but restrained by the golden light, he could neither move nor make a single sound. Zhao Ju grabbed the middle-aged man's head with one hand. The black light in his palm expanded, turning into strands of black chi that drilled straight into the other's head. The middle-aged man's facial muscles immediately spasmed violently. Blood flowed from his 5 features, and his expression twisted in extreme pain. Zhao Ju's face did not change at all. The black chi in his palm continued to pour out, invading without pause. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's body began to tremble violently. A dull thud sounded inside his head, as if something had exploded. The light in his eyes quickly dimmed, and his vitality was completely severed. Zhao Ju's expression darkened. This person's situation is exactly the same as that integration stage cultivator from Skywater City earlier. His spirit was placed under a restriction. Once soul-searching touches a certain part of his memories, it immediately self-destructs. Even if soul-searching were possible, a nascent soul cultivator like him wouldn't know much anyway. There's no longer any meaning in staying here. Hearing this, Zhao Eight said with a hint of mockery, "Then hurry up and leave. Let's go to another Red Moon City." After speaking, his figure shot up into the air, and the 3 beside him immediately followed. We're leaving too," Zhao Ju snorted coldly, turning to Han Li and Zhao 16 as he spoke. The 3 also rose into the air at the same time. The group of 7 left this city. Without stopping, they quickly headed for the next Red Moon City. Several days later, they arrived at a city beside a gigantic lake, completely covered by a blue restriction. In name, it was a lake, but in truth it connected to the open sea, like an inland sea embedded within the land. Outside, the city was a harbor, with hundreds upon thousands of ships coming and going without end, the scene grand beyond compare. This was Red Moon City of Feng Prefecture. This was already the 6th Red Moon City they had visited in the past few days. Each city was the same as Red Moon City of Lan Prefecture. The island's inhabitants were all carrying out the pilgrimage, and beneath the ground, there also existed a similar hollow space. Aside from those points, they discovered nothing else unusual. The 7 descended outside the city, then entered. Inside, main roads connected the 4 city gates, and at the center was an enormous circular plaza. At this moment, the plaza was packed with people, with believers gathering from all directions for the pilgrimage. Han Li swept over the area with the bright clear spirit eyes, then gently closed his eyes. This place was completely identical to the previous Red Moon cities. There were no high-level cultivators in the city at all. Most likely, this would once again be a fruitless trip. Zhao Eight curled his lip, about to say something, when a light breeze passed. Zhao Ju had already taken Han Li and Zhao 16 deeper into the city. A cold glint flashed in Zhao Eight's eyes. He said nothing more and led the remaining 3 down another street. A short while later, Zhao Ju's group of 3 reached a secluded area and prepared to split up. Zhao Ju suddenly said to Han Li and Zhao 16, "In the Impermanence Alliance's missions, there's an unwritten rule. Whoever plays a key role will be rewarded, and the rewards are extremely generous. Even if there aren't many clues right now, you must not relax. Don't let the benefits fall into Zhao Eight's group's hands." Han Li and Zhao 16 were briefly stunned, then immediately clasped their hands and said, "Many thanks for the reminder, fellow Taoist." Zhao Ju nodded and turned to leave. Zhao 16 greeted Han Li, then hurried off in another direction. Han Li also turned and went down a different street, his eyes sweeping across the shops on both sides as if searching for something. At this moment, The pilgrimage ritual in the city was about to end, and the number of people moving about gradually increased. Han Li did not conceal his figure, moving like an ordinary person. Before long, he quickly stepped into a shop by the roadside, a bookstore specializing in ancient texts. The shop was fairly large, with 4 floors in total. The first floor had 3 rooms, each 4 or 5 jang wide, filled with shelves of books. Since it was still the time of the pilgrimage, the shop was rather quiet. "Honored guest, what kind of text do you need?" A plump, middle-aged man with a catfish mustache and a smiling face stepped forward to greet him. Han Li glanced over the shelves and said, "Do you have ancient maps or geographical texts? The older the better." A flicker of something unusual flashed in the plump, middle-aged man's eyes, but he quickly returned to normal and replied with a smile, "We have maps, but they aren't very old." That brief flicker in the man's eyes lasted only an instant, but it did not escape Han Li. His heart stirred slightly, and a layer of star-like light appeared in his pupils. The plump, middle-aged man froze, his expression immediately turning blank. "Bring out your oldest maps and geographical texts," Han Li said calmly. "Yes," the plump, middle-aged man replied dully and turned to go inside. Han Li followed after him. A short while later, he left the shop holding a brown-covered book in his hand, made of a material like animal hide, looking extremely ancient. A look of excitement flashed in Han Li's eyes. Nearly half a day later, the 7 gathered once again, every one of them looking extremely gloomy. In this city, they still had not found a single clue. The underground space was still hollow as before, with absolutely no leads related to Gongshu Hong. Zhao 8 could not help but complain, "Where in the world is this Gongshu Hong hiding? Is he really going to make true mortals like us keep digging under the ground of this island forever?" "Don't be too impatient," Zhao 8 continued. "Even if Gongshu Hong has hidden himself away, this is still his territory. On Red Moon Island, there are only a bit more than 20 Red Moon cities. We search them one by one, sooner or later, we'll uncover a clue." After speaking, Zhao 8 turned as if he was about to leave. At that moment, a voice rang out. "Fellow Taoist Zhao 8, wait a moment. As for the Red Moon Island Lord's hiding place, I may have found a bit of a lead." Hearing this, everyone immediately jolted, and all eyes turned toward Han Li. Joy rose in Zhao Ju's heart, and he quickly asked, "Really? What lead?" Han Li made a hand seal, and a sheet of watery light appeared, condensing into a water mirror. "Please take a look." On the water mirror appeared a map of the island. Compared to the map Zhao 8 had previously given everyone, it was basically the same, only a bit more detailed. Zhao 25 snorted softly. "Isn't this the map we already looked at before?" A few others also showed puzzled expressions. But at this moment, both Zhao 8 and Zhao Ju let out quiet exclamations of surprise, their gazes fixed intently on the water mirror. Han Li smiled and said, "The public maps sold in the cities do not mark the major rivers that flow across the island. But in reality, the island has many great rivers. I personally traveled along the way and recorded these waterways." As he spoke, he pointed at the water mirror. Large rivers immediately appeared on the map. When everyone saw this, their expressions changed. Han Li continued, "Because time was tight, I only gathered part of the information about these waterways. But you can all see that every Red Moon city we visited lies near a major river or a lake." Zhao 13 spoke up, "Being near major rivers makes transportation convenient. That's normal." "That's true," Han Li nodded. "But just now, I used a bewitching technique on the bookstore shopkeeper and learned something. On this island, whether it's maps or texts, it is strictly forbidden to clearly draw the convergence directions of the rivers. This order was personally issued by the Saint Lord." At this, everyone fell silent. Han Li raised his hand and pointed to a location on the map. "All of these major rivers ultimately converge at one place. It is Red Moon City of Kun Prefecture." Zhao 25 said doubtfully, "That's only speculation. Can you be sure Gongshu Hong is there?" Han Li replied calmly, "I don't dare to be certain, but right now we have no other destination. Compared to searching blindly, it's better to go there and take a look, the chances are greater." "Very reasonable," Zhao Ju laughed loudly. "If fellow Taoist Zhao 15 hadn't discovered this, we might still be completely lost." Zhao 16 also nodded in agreement. Zhao 8 fell silent for a moment, then laughed, heh, and said, "Fine. Then we'll head to Kun Prefecture immediately." Several days later, on a dark night, in the skies over the central region of Red Moon Island, 2 thick streaks of escape light tore through the wind and plunged down into a forest. The lights receded, revealing 2 flying ships of different shapes. 6 or 7 figures descended one after another, each wearing a strange beast mask. Ahead was Red Moon City of Kun Prefecture. In the city, it seemed the pilgrimage ritual was also underway. The massive city stood in the darkness. blazing red torches lighting up the sky and forming an eerie scene. Outside the city, a layer of blue restriction covered everything, and beneath the torchlight it faintly revealed a deep crimson tint. Zhao Ju said in a low voice, "We shouldn't delay. Let's enter the city." Everyone changed their appearances, donned black cloaks, and quietly moved toward Red Moon City. After entering, a serious atmosphere covered everything. Pedestrians silently headed toward the city center, hands clasped before their chests, mouths softly chanting. As they neared the central plaza, the crowd was packed tightly together. Han Li stood among the people and looked up, seeing ahead a colossal statue over 100 zhang tall, its entire body showing a blood-red color. Before the statue's chest, 7 figures floated in midair, dressed in blue-black robes, with eerie auras surrounding them. In everyone's eyes, these people were like lofty gods. The 7 all lowered their heads slightly, chanting in low voices, their expressions extremely devout. This episode ends here. Everyone, remember to like and subscribe to receive notifications for the next episode.